As I was watching TV this morning, flipping around between different football games and whatever else, all of a sudden this one commercial came on, and they started off with the words, Judgment Day. And, oh, really? I need to take a look at this, see what's going on, what they're talking about. Well, their reference to it being Judgment Day was Thanksgiving is Judgment Day. It's the day when so many of your loved ones will be gathering with you, and they will be looking into your oven and judging how clean or dirty it is. And it turns out it was a commercial for an oven cleaner. That's how far we have sunk in terms of Judgment Day. But I was very grateful because at least it gave me a lead into my homily tonight, so I was grateful for that. We have heard this story many times. I remember being rather confused because Jesus talks about we'll be separating the sheep from the goats. And I always thought, well, it's so strange that the sheep would be considered the good ones. If you were a sheep, wouldn't you be thought of as being on the bad side? And yes, on Judgment Day, I will have to pay for that one also. But this story, and it is a story, it's not necessarily something that we need to take literally. It's spoken in what we call apocalyptic imagery, language that kind of focused on the end times or disastrous situations. But when we have apocalyptic language, it always serves as a statement of God's victory, or God is in charge. And I've thought about Judgment Day. And I've thought about from the time so many of us were so very young that there it was, and we were all going to be gathered on this big, huge open space, this plain. And then God was going to open this great big book, and he was going to announce to the entire world everything that each of us had ever done wrong. It was time for judgment. And I've said this to you before, I remember being terrified in that, not because everybody that had ever lived was going to find out all the things that I had done that was bad, but that my mom would find out. And that scared me to death. But I've learned since then, and I want to offer to you a different vision, the possibilities of what we mean by Judgment Day, because it really has to do with this feast today of Christ the King. And if Christ is King, then our judgment has far greater implications than just running down each of our rap sheets. There was a prayer in the Mass a while back, and in it are these words: "The power of the cross reveals your judgment on the world and the kingship of Christ crucified." God's judgment on the world and the power of Christ crucified. And it is in the crucifixion and the resurrection of Jesus that we find God's judgment on our world. And in that sense, judgment needs to have a completely different understanding for us. If God judges us, he does so knowing what we hope and what we pray as the basis of our faith. And what the resurrection of Jesus shows us, that good is stronger than evil, that love is stronger than hate, and that life is stronger than death. That's the resurrection. That's God saying all the evil that is in the world, that has been in the world, I am stronger. You may not know it, but the last chapter has already been written, and I win. And my way is right. Not just for Jesus, but because of Jesus and his love for all my children. So let's take another look at judgment. I guess I kind of see it really as, I don't want to say 2 days because I think each day could last much longer than that, but two different events. In the first event, God will gather everyone together, and yes, there will need to be some kind of an accounting. The first day we'll call accounting day. That we will be reassured that there have been consequences to our actions. That our lives and the decisions we make do matter. And accounting day will be where we're reminded God didn't miss anything. And I don't know what kind of a day that's going to be. But the second day, the second event, where God shows his judgment on this world, his judgment is life and resurrection. And God will gather us all together. And he will reveal to each and every one of us how he took every decision that we made and used that to bring about good, or to bring about some form of resurrection or healing. How he took the times when we tried to be loving and generous and caring, even when we felt frustrated in doing so. And he will show to us, no, there was a lot more good that came from that. This was when God says, I worked in ripples. And we'll stand there and we'll say, I had no idea. And God will show us even the bad decisions, the stupid things, the sinful choices we made. And he will show us how he took that and brought good out of it. Resurrection. Good coming from evil. That's God's way. And we will stand there. And we will say again, I had no idea. God says, my judgment on you is shown in the kingship of Christ. My judgment on my creation. It's back what they said at the beginning of my creation. God saw that it was good. And this day of judgment is not going to be a fearful or terror-filled thing. It's going to be a day of so much incredible awe that I don't know how we're going to be able to stand it. Because as we said, we will have to be saying over and over again, I had no idea. And God will say, I know. But it's pretty great, isn't it? For some reason, as I have been preparing for this homily this weekend, I've had one of my friends in mind. Her name is Teresa. And she works in radio. And she works very hard with a team of others, and for some reason, I just picture my friend Teresa on Judgment Day, when God will be showing to her that through this time of COVID, how what she and her partners did, just in terms of bringing laughter or trying to lift people's spirits in whatever ways. God will show to her how much of a difference that made in so many lives. And it's true for each and every one of us. As parents, as spouses, as grandparents, as co-workers, as believers, as members of our human family. Judgment Day, God wins. It's good. The cross reflects God's judgment on the world and the glory of Christ crucified. Let us not be afraid. Let us remember again today, Christ the King, the thing that sometimes we are too quick to forget because it doesn't always look that way. But the fact remains, God is in charge. And when the kingdom comes in its fullness, God's way, the way of love, is what will prevail.